Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, we are from group 6. In this video, we will explain about conversational structure and analysis. And let me introduce myself. My name is Chandriski Lestari and I will be the first speaker. Firstly, I will explain about the background of conversational structure. Conversational structure itu terbagi menjadi 3 topik, yaitu adjacency pairs and closing sequence, turn taking and interruption, dan yang terakhir topic, narrative, and topic change. Okay, next slide, yaitu background. A conversation is an impromptu, spontaneous, everyday exchange of talk between 2 or more participants. The participants in a conversation take turns, and during their turn, each makes a conversational move of some kind. When people conduct a conversation, an interaction is an internationally managed and locally managed phenomenon. Not all kinds of verbal exchange are conversation. A formal speech is planned in advance and is managed primarily by the person giving it. Analysis in conversation focus on talk interaction, how talk progress, how is it facilitated or impeded, how turns are taken in talk, and how this process both shape and are shaped by social context. What people say is just as important as how they say it. Also, the important are the pause people take in expressing themselves and how or whether they interrupt by themselves or otherwise taking. Conversation analysis is often linked to ethnomethodology. Next, adjacency pairs and closing sequence. Adjacency pairs are sequences in which a particular type of action in one turn makes relevant or restricted range of action in a next term. Adjacency pairs thus define a more constrained order of structure than the simple adjacency. Common examples include assertion between agree or disagree, invitation between acceptance or rejection, question answer or no answer, and request between granting or refusal. Jadi hubungan antara ujaran yang satu dengan ujaran yang lainnya beserta ujaran responnya tersebut memiliki tata urutan otomatis yang disebut dengan pasangan berdampingan atau adjacency pairs. Following Cyclops and Sachs, adjacency pairs are defined as follows. First is adjacent. Second, produced by different speakers. Third, ordered as a first pair part and a second pair part. Next, type, so that a particular first pair part action records a particular second or range of second pair part action. For example, the first pair part action is over, required second pair part action is acceptance or rejection. Contoh dari adjacency pairs itu contohnya antara question dan answer. Contohnya, what do you want to do today? The answer, going to the river. Ada juga antara request dan rejection. Contohnya, is it fine if I borrow this book? The rejection is, sorry, it's due back at the library tomorrow. Kemudian ada greeting dan response. Itu seperti hello. Kemudian responsnya, oh hi. Dan banyak contoh-contoh lainnya di PowerPoint kami. Cyclops and Sachs berpendapat bahwa adjacency pairs mengikuti aturan sedemikian rupa Sehingga setelah menghasilkan sepasang bagian pertama dari beberapa pasangan, pembicara harus berhenti berbicara dan pembicara berikutnya must produce at that point and the interchange a second paired part to the same pair. It is the participants themselves who are very sensitive to the structural form of this interchange format. Okay, next, closing sequences. The sequential nature of talk as action means that one turn will always follow another. As participants, we have to create the possibility of stopping this potentially never-ending process in a realizable and accomplished way. It is important to recognize that all times conversationalists construct conversation dynamically and immediately, and they are always oriented to achieving the continued occurrence of the turn-taking machinery which makes conversation possible. Menurut Segloff and Sachs, the problem of closing is bagaimana cara mengatur kedatangan pembicara secara bersamaan pada titik di mana penyelesaian satu pembicara tidak akan menyebabkan pembicara lain. Dan itu tidak akan terdengar seperti ketika beberapa pembicara itu diam. So, whoever is the first concerned with stopping the conversation must produce a forced pair part, which has a certain kind of special status. A forced pair part which, when uttered, indicated a desire to move towards finishing the conversation. But the sequential placing of that forced pair is critical, as is the orientation of the second pair part to the first, which signifies whether the next speaker to the current speakers has taken up the offer of a possible closing. Typically, a speaker who wishes to move towards creating the possibility of closing will initiate a pre-closing sequence of the form well or alright, accompanied by a downward intonation. For example, the example of closing sequences in this conversation, Jorin and Teresa. Oh, it's just like bringing the blood up. Teresa. Yeah, well, things as always work out for the best. Jorin? Oh, certainly, alright. Teresa? Uh-huh. Okay. Jorin? Goodbye, and Teresa answered, good night. Okay, that's enough from me. The next material will be explained with my friend Amelia Larasati. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Amelia Larasati. My student number is 111. I will explain about turn taking and interruption. Another instance of the importance of the sequential nature of turn taking is observed in interruption. It's important to distinguish between an overlap and an interruption. Keeping in mind the one speaker at time and other associate speaker segment rules specified above, what is often significant in the next speaker selection process a current speaker displays is the forward projection of the transition relevant place. Typically, the current speaker will change the intonation of his lower voice in particular way, upwards or downwards, might put stress on a specific words, and so on. Contoh lain dari pentingnya sifat berurutan pembicaraan diamati dalam interupsi. Penting untuk membedakan antara tumpang tindih dan gangguan. Proyeksi ke depan biasanya speaker saat ini akan mengubah intonasi suara dengan cara tertentu, ke atas atau ke bawah. mungkin membuat stres pada kata tertentu dan sebagainya. For example, first speaker, you have been down here before, haven't you? Second speaker, yeah. The rules outlined above lead to certain predictions regarding the nature of interaction. Interactions will tend to occur as committing first starts, two people beginning at the same time. In nearly all such cases, one person will drop out. Aturan yang diuraikan di atas menyebabkan prediksi tertentu mengenai sifat gangguan. Misalnya, gangguan yang tidak disengaja akan cenderung terjadi sebagai persaingan antara dua orang yang memulai berbicara secara bersamaan pada saat yang sama. Dalam hampir semua kasus seperti itu, satu orang akan putus atau berhenti bicara karena pembicaraannya terpotong oleh orang lain. Jefferson and Scarecrow called this the initial drop point, suggesting that it is better to consider such instances as false starts. Only if there is a continuation beyond this drop-off point could such an overlap be considered a true interruption. A typical example of the first word be as follows. Speaker B, okay, the doctor, Dr. Eddington, he's the first one that told Speaker D, Harrington, Speaker B, Eddington, he works out, blah blah blah. Where Speaker D interrupts simply for clarification about the person B is talking about. Dalam hal ini menyebut titik penurunan awal, menyarankan bahwa lebih baik untuk menganggap contoh seperti itu sebagai awal yang salah, karena tumpang tindih seperti itu dapat dianggap sebagai gangguan yang sebenarnya. A number of studies have considered the nature of interruptions and hypothesis that it is the power relations between participants that help determine the distribution of interruptions in conversations. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Irani Zawatuka, my student number 088. I will explain about topic selection, narrative, and topic change in conversation. Early research on conversation simply assumed that talk was always about something and every conversation was always focused one topic or another. However, topic is not simply a matter of content, but is also constituted by the procedure and structure provided and produced by the participant. Jadi, penelitian awal tentang percakapan hanya mengasumsikan bahwa pembicaraan selalu tentang something dan setiap percakapan selalu terfokus pada satu topik atau lainnya. Namun, topik bukan hanya masalah konten, tetapi juga ditentukan oleh prosedur dan struktur yang disediakan dan diproduksi oleh para peserta. Dalam contoh di PPT bahwa ada dua mahasiswa yang bertemu di kampus, pertama-tama memperkenalkan topik penelitian, tetapi satu mahasiswa ingin berhenti melakukan pekerjaan penelitian, kemudian diikuti dengan keheningan dan nafas panjang. Cara tersebut adalah untuk menghindari konsekuensi peserta yang berbeda pandangan topik. Perubahan topik adalah cara di mana pembicara formal secara bergiliran ketika ketidaksepakatan mengakibatkan kegagalan pada transisi pembicara. This potentiating and facilitative nature of the conversational context in another important interaction aspect of talk, particularly in educational and learning environment. This raises a final aspect regarding topic in conversational, the relation between topic formulational and storytelling or normification. Thanks for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
My name is Siti Nafila and my student number 120. I want to explain about conversational analysis. Conversational is a reciprocal talk between two or more people rather than a purposive attempt to reach some conclusion or to express some viewpoint. It is more than sharing words. In a conversation, context plays a pivotal role in that the meaning of a conversation depends on who the participants are, why they are there, and the language used. The linguistic choices are not made arbitrarily, but systematically motivated by contextual factors. Dealing with nonverbal behavior, there are at least 6 distinct activities which are visible during conversation. Visible activity in talk gesture. The first thing to recognize with gesture is that principally we are concerned with hand and arm gesture, although we might note that body orientation might be conceived as a form of whole body gesture. There are certainly a number of quite diverse approaches to the study of gesture, given that it touches on questions of the evolution of language, whether gesture is natural or learned, whether it could be an independent language, and so on. The first point to note is that it is principally about speakers. The gestures people make when directing their talk at somebody else. Visible activity in talk proxemics. Proxemic is the study or description of the ways in which people employ and interpret physical and spatial distance as part of their ongoing interactions. It is probably useful to think of proxemics along at least 2 dimensions. Proxemics berkaitan dengan cara orang menggunakan dan menafsirkan jarak, fisik, dan spasial sebagai bagian dari interaksi mereka yang sedang berlangsung. Ada juga jarak vertikal yang mengkomunikasikan sesuatu di antara orang-orang. Dalam hal ini, jarak vertikal dipahami untuk menyampaikan tingkat dominasi atau subordinasi dalam suatu hubungan. Salah satu bidang aktivitas yang paling banyak diteliti dalam komunikasi nonverbal yaitu tatapan mata, gaze. When the speaker looks at a listener, where the listener looks at the speaker, and mutual gaze. While listening, you tend to look much more compared to when you are speaking, and speakers will often alter their talk if they do not experience mutual gaze with the listener. The timing of the gaze or look is also very critical in situation where you wish to interrupt somebody else or prevent another from interrupting you. Mata memainkan peran penting dalam interaksi dan hal-hal seperti melihat, menatap, dan berkedip. Itu semua adalah perilaku nonverbal yang penting. Saat orang bertemu atau hal yang mereka sukai, kecepatan berkedip meningkat dan pupil membesar. Melihat orang lain dapat menunjukkan berbagai emosi termasuk permusuhan, minat, dan ketertarikan. Next, touch and body contact. Body contact includes both intentional and unintentional touching of various kinds. Gradle, Cheshire, and Swan remains as that body contact is related to proximity in the sense that you can only touch if you are near enough to another person, and they suggest that the significance of certain proximities may derive from the potential for body contact. A good deal of research has found that touching is related to status and power, where those with higher power and status appear to have touching privilege over those of lower status. Perbedaan jenis kelamin juga berperan dalam bagaimana orang memanfaatkan sentuhan untuk mengkomunikasikan makna. Visible activity in talk, posture, and body orientation. How people sit, stand, and generally hold themselves has often been seen as an indication of their innermost feelings and the state of their relationship with others. Gretel suggests that we should be cautious when interpreting posture and body orientation, noting that what seems important is whether the person is displaying general feature of tension relaxation. Misalnya, seseorang yang merasa marah akan menunjukkan seperti postur tubuhnya menunjukkan kecenderungan mendekat. Dibanding dengan orang yang merasa takut, mereka akan merasa lemah, tunduk, dan postur tubuhnya akan menunjukkan kecenderungan menghindar, yaitu kebalikan dari orang yang sedang marah. Next, facial expression. Facial expressions are responsible for a huge proportion of nonverbal communication. Consider how much information can be conveyed with a smile or a frown. The look on a person's face is often the first thing we see, even before we hear what they have to say. In the study of facial expression as a nonverbal behavior, two issues and stand out. A. The extent to which our facial response to emotional stimuli are innate and least both happen. Similar response observed in animal behavior. And B. The question of how facial expression convey meaning to people. Raut wajah seseorang seringkali menjadi hal pertama yang kita lihat, bahkan sebelum kita mendengar apa yang mereka katakan. Meskipun komunikasi dan perilaku nonverbal dapat bervariasi antar budaya, ekspresi wajah seperti kebahagiaan, kesedihan, kemarahan, dan ketakutan serupa di seluruh dunia.
I am Amelia Larasati, my student number is 111. I will explain about nonverbal communication. Nonverbal behavior brings to mind such phrases as body language or body signaling. And there is certainly a common sense view that we communicate to each other, at least in part, by what we do with our bodies. Perilaku nonverbal itu seperti bahasa tubuh, dan tentunya ada pandangan yang masuk akal bahwa kita berkomunikasi satu sama lain melalui apa yang kita lakukan dengan tubuh kita. First, completing and elaborating nonverbal utterances. If nonverbal behavior was in any sense an essential function, then communicating on the telephone would not be possible at all. It remains uncertain how significant it is to be able to embellish and elaborate our talk with nonverbal gestures, and the index to which this is a culturally determined phenomenon. Second, evidence of attentiveness on the part of the listener. We know that we are compelled to at least look up and gaze at the speaker when listening to somebody. However, as we will go on to consider, care must be taken to distinguish between nonverbal behavior and nonverbal communication.
I want to continue explain to number 3, self-presentation. One of the few studies of style displayed through nonverbal behavior seems to indicate that there are 4 dimensions we are sensitive to: expressiveness, animation, expansiveness, and coordination, although such contrasts are very likely to be culture-specific. Number 4, managing synchrony of utterances. Ini berkaitan dengan orientasi gerak tubuh, gerakan, dan yang terpenting waktu terlibat dalam percakapan sehari-hari. Example, if somebody seems to interrupt at all the wrong points or seems to look away at those moments where we expect to be gathered. Thanks for your attention. We apologize if in explaining there were mistakes. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.